Accessing agent files. Brian Sovryn. Early 21st century anarchist. Creator and host of the podcast Sovryn Tech. By the year 2021, the show would be instrumental in the downfall of various conservative ideologies in the government, helping usher in an incredible time.
Hey, want to take a walk on the wild side and experience the bleeding edge of technology? Then get ready, because it doesn't get much more edgy than this. You're in for a wild ride. You're listening to Sovryn Tech with your host, the man in triple black, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He's got a huge brain. And now here's Brian.
Oh yes, the Rembrandt of the podcast canvas here with you for another great episode of Sovryn Tech. Of course, today I am joined by the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy.
Hello, I love your introductions that you give me. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. And I am also joined, we are also joined by Marc de Mesel. Marc, thank you for being on the show.
Hi, Brian and Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I am really excited about this. Marc is a great friend. And he's also a cryptocurrency investor, and he is honestly, when it comes to cryptocurrency investing, he is serious as a heart attack, and I love it. I really, and you're an insightful guy on a lot of subjects, not just cryptocurrencies, but incredibly insightful on that. And I know you're a big fan of one of my favorite cryptocurrencies. In fact, at one point I almost put the symbol for this in the show, and that is Next. And I know you're a big fan of that, Marc.
Yes, I am, and I'm so honored to be on this show because I really enjoy Sovryn Tech very much. I think you're on the leading edge of technology and cryptocurrency, and I'm really honored.
See, if you want to get on this show, all you got, flattery will get you everywhere. That is a fact.
I was going to say, that's a Belgian accent you hear. Marc is from Belgium, and if I were going to give him a nickname, I would call him the Belgian Blue, because there's this breed of cattle, otherwise known as bulls, called the Belgian Blue, and they're, I don't know how they got that name. Maybe they originated in Belgium, but they're muscular, like they're full of muscles. And you look at pictures of these cows, they look like Arnold Schwarzenegger in cow form. And so, he's bullish on cryptocurrencies. So, and he's Belgian, so they would have called him the Belgian Blue.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I thought you were referring to my body, but I could relate a lot more of it.
See, then we just call you the muscles from Brussels, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get into the show. We've got so much to talk about, and Marc, I can't wait to hear a lot of it. We're going to talk a lot about Next, and I think that's really that's going to be an exciting thing to discuss. So
yeah, I really am glad to have the opportunity to talk about it, as I invested a lot of money into NXT, and I have felt frustrated about the lack of attention it has gotten in the Bitcoin community. So yeah, I'm really happy to make up for that.
Yeah, well, let's get into that in a minute. We're going to get through some rapid fire stories here quick. The first one being talking about money, or perhaps saving money. Munich. Now, of course, have you been to Munich, Marc?
No, I have not.
No, okay. Well, the city of Munich in Germany has switched to Ubuntu for all of their government computers. And apparently they're claiming to have saved tens of millions of euros in doing so. So going open source is definitely the way to save a ton of money and get far more efficient. And I was kind of shocked, to hear that they did this, and that they admitted to the fact that they were wasting so much money on closed source software. But I'm not going to give the government any congratulations. They're late to the game. So many people have jumped on the open source community that, again, it just shows how far behind the government is, and how people with just real passion for something can create something that can help everybody, even the unintended people like governments, and save them tens of millions of euros. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And that's happening in a lot of places where a lot of governments and even corporations are just running away from OS X, and they're running away from Windows, and they're going to Linux, and they're saving a ton of money in doing so, and whatever. I mean, I guess as long as that money that they save doesn't go off to killing people, whatever. So another story. Actually, Marc, you're a bit of a gamer, aren't you?
Well, I have gamed a lot, that's correct.
Yeah, you're a PC gamer?
Yes, I liked very much the real-time strategy multiplayer games.
Oh, I'm with you. I am with you on that all the way. And so they actually, you've heard of, you've seen an Xbox, you've messed with the 360 and like the Xbox One. I guess have you heard of the Kinect? Do you know what the Kinect is?
I think I heard it mentioned, but no.
Yeah, well, the Kinect is it's a camera, essentially, that gets connected to an Xbox normally, and what it allows you to do is it allows you to do motion controls in a game. So, like, say you were playing a Star Wars game, and you could swing around like you were swinging a lightsaber, and your character on the screen would end up doing that. Well, they're actually going to release this now, the newest version of Kinect, for Windows. And I mean, how do you feel about motion gaming, Marc? I mean, motion controls. What do you think about that idea?
I did it with a friend. I liked it, the Nintendo.
Oh, with the Wii?
Yeah.
I like that too.
Yeah, but I never bought it myself. Have you?
Considering the games, like you mentioned, you play real-time strategy games, right? You know, what you play on, and that's the same thing I like to play mainly on PCs. I don't see it as, like, even useful. I don't know what Microsoft's thinking, in releasing it for Windows. I mean, I can't even think of a game that would actually really use it the way that they talk about. So, I don't know. I see it as a bit of a waste. I mean, would you concur?
Well, I don't know. I think it's the future. The future is that you are in a room where you have tremendous experiences, all surrounded by image.
Oh, okay, more like virtual reality.
Yeah. So it's the right direction, I think.
Yeah, Stephanie, I'm curious. I mean, do you think that if video games, I know you're not much of a video game player.
No.
But if the games involved a lot more motion, maybe, would that be something that would intrigue you more to want to play video games, or would it not appeal to you at all?
No, what would intrigue me more to play video games would be if I had unlimited money and time.
Sure, there you go.
That's really what it is.
Fair enough.
And I didn't have any other interests. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd rather be like doing some workout or having sex or doing something.
Absolutely, I'm with
Those
you on
things
that.
appeal
I think
to
we're
me
all with
more
you
than
on
video
that.
games.
Yeah.
My God, I'm innocent.
Not after Sovryn Tech, buddy.
No, we're gonna corrupt you, Marc.
Anyway, but this is the thing: is that, like, some people were saying, well, this could be really cool, and actually, this part might intrigue you, Stephanie. Is that with Kinect on Windows, you could do like yoga games or like workout games or whatever. But here's the thing. Why can't you just do that with the camera built into the laptop or built into, the monitor or whatever? It seems completely redundant to release this for PC. So I'm not excited about it.
Yeah, that's the thing too. I don't understand, like with the Wii,
right.
the Nintendo Wii. There are people who play tennis on the Wii or golf or whatever, but the stroke is not the same. If you're playing tennis or golf in a virtual world, it doesn't help you with your golf game in real life.
No, it's not
different
good practice.
It's a different motion. It's similar, but it's different.
Yeah.
So it seems like you still kind of have to choose between either doing it in real life or doing it in the virtual world.
Right. I mean, there's ways in which motion controls really can make for a fun game. The Wii proved that in a lot of ways, but I agree with you, not in the ways that you're talking about. So anyway, I think it's a waste for them to release it. I don't know what they actually removed it from the Xbox One as being sold as required to come with it. And I'm just guessing they have like this tremendous stock of these Kinects sitting somewhere, and they just got to sell them, and so they're just trying everything they can. But anyway, I move on to another story, and then I really want to get into talking about next. There were two Earth-like planets, that apparently, Earth-like planets way out there, because that's what NASA does, right? They're searching for Earth-like planets, and they don't exist. These are Gliese 581G and Gliese 581D, and these were supposed to be ones that, we found another Earth. We found another Earth. You hear all these stories all the time, and then come to find out, actually those don't exist. And these weren't announced like 20, 30 years ago. These were announced in 2007 and 2010. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's one of those areas where I get to say, Yeah, maybe I'm kind of right, because I tell people constantly that an Earth-like planet, a planet like Earth, that's capable of supporting complex life, and I say complex life, I think are incredibly rare in the universe. And I think we're finding out that a lot of science, where they just come out and start saying these stories, oh yeah, we found another planet like Earth, it might just be straight up bullshit. Mark, I'm curious. I mean, how do you feel? Do you think that there's a lot of complex life out in the universe?
Yes, I think it's mathematically a certainty.
Okay.
I really like that, just that comparison. If only one in so many would have, only one in a billion or even less would have it, then still you would have an endless
there'd still be
amount of them.
Yeah. See, I really got to get kind of convinced of it, but I agree. The math one would say that, there should be something, out there, and there, considering the the amount of stars and all the galaxies, it does raise the question. So you think that there is quite a few habitable planets or planets that support complex life out there?
Yes. And you?
Well, I'm not sold. I think you have what they call the Fermi paradox, which, and I want there to be lots of complex life out there, make no mistake. But you have what's called the Fermi paradox, which says that because you're right, the math stands up that there should be a ton of planets out there supporting this stuff. But the Fermi paradox says, if they're out there, why haven't we seen them? Why haven't we gotten any radio waves from them? Even now, even though granted they're so far away and all that. So I'm not totally sold on it. And this really kind of, to me, this story says that maybe. Maybe they're not, because the planets that keep getting announced might not actually even be Earth-like at all as we understand it. So, but I agree. I understand, Mark, that the math would seem to say there has to be, complex life out there, and there has to be Earth-like planets. So, I guess those are kind of two different questions, I suppose, because is there complex life? Are there habitable planets? One doesn't necessitate the other. So
yeah, and was it? I forgot what show it was. Was it Cosmos? The old one
with Sagan, yeah.
But that was talking about how would life look on these other habitable planets, and it can be so different. Yeah, no, that's for sure. He did talk about that, but of course he also talked about how some people theorize that maybe the life wasn't so different. I think there was a book by Christian Huygens that Carl Sagan talked about in that, where it essentially said, it's probably not that different. But then Sagan, of course, would say, look, they don't have to be anything like us at all. And I agree with that. And so maybe that's the thing. Maybe the life is just so different. That's why we don't see anything of it.
Does this question really affect your life a lot? Because to me, the way I feel about it is if we're going to encounter aliens in our lifetime, maybe they'll come to us, maybe we'll come to them, then that'll happen. Until that point, I'm not really going to change much about the way I'm living.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly it doesn't affect you if your end game is for there to no longer be government, right? I think some people have a problem with this because so much money is being spent on finding other life when they would say that the evidence doesn't show that there would be other complex life out there.
Do they get mad about the government wasting money on other things? The government's always going to waste money.
Sure, but this is
why this issue. I don't know. I just don't get the significance of it. It has an answer.
I think
we don't know the answer, and
right.
What does it matter?
Yeah, for a lot of people, it doesn't hold any serious significance, certainly. But for other people who, and granted, maybe they shouldn't be wasting their quote unquote wasting their time on the thought. They do. There's a lot of people who want to find other life on other planets to end Christianity. Even though the Pope says that they would baptize a Martian.
Yeah, they'll just change Christianity to fit around.
Certainly, of course. And the Catholic Church has already said that they're open to there being other life out there. But for a lot of people, this is a huge question. I mean, they see this as a solution to a lot of problems. They see it as a solution to ending hate and things like that. And so, if it's a fiction, it's still important, I think, to
ending hate. Really?
Sure.
I mean, people are still racist all over Earth. Like almost everybody is racist, and we can't even get along with people who are humans but look slightly different from us.
But that's the theory, is that you would create, and it's funny because they're still being racist, but that's the theory, is that if aliens came down, we would unite as a species, as humanity, because now we would have something really different to hate. I mean,
so ridiculous.
That's not the way they would say it.
Yeah.
But that's how a lot of people think, including President Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, he made that, how quickly we unite if, suddenly this foe from outer space came, or however he happened to say it. So I certainly hope there's other complex life out there, but boy, I think if it is exceptionally rare. Anyway, Marc.
I think the distance is the problem.
Right.
Sure, mathematically, it is certain or extremely likely that there is a lot of life in the universe, but the distance, it's just how far does our society needs to evolve before we are able to just travel our own galaxy.
Right.
Yeah,
and like I've said on this show in the past, I mean, I wouldn't want humanity as it stands to go meeting other life. You know what I mean? Would you want Obama or, take your pick of the politician or whoever to be meeting these people? Do you want the U.S. Army to be the greeting party, for some aliens? No way. I don't want that at all. So anyway, let's move on to the
Good
next
point.
story. So, thank you.
Yeah, I like your point. You're right.
So, but Blackcoin. Now we're going to talk about next, but this is my clever lead-in to talking about next, because there is a ton of news coming out about Blackcoin. Blackcoin is one of the currencies that I do accept as a donation, and one of the things that excites me about it is that it is a proof of stake currency. And I'm a huge fan of Proof of Stake, and they just announced that they are actually going to release Proof of Stake 2.0, which is going to solve a lot of things like people talk about, like Coinage, etc. Now, I haven't read the white paper. I don't know how they plan on solving
Wouldn't
a lot of the issues.
Wouldn't it be the dark paper or the black paper?
Yeah, maybe it's the black paper. It's not the white paper. So I don't know how they plan on doing this, but I am intrigued to see it. But I just wanted to get that out there because there's that, and there's a slew of other things that Blackcoin is really coming out with. Again, you can kind of test this stuff. Some of the stuff is mostly in beta, but it is out there. Like they have Black Halo, which is apparently a decentralized exchange and smart contract system that they came out with. Links are in the show notes if you want to check this stuff out. Also, there is something called Blackbit, which is a website that you can sign up for and kind of a wallet system that you can sign up for. And what it does is that anywhere you could purchase, like say Newegg just started taking Bitcoin. You could, with Blackbit, you could go to Newegg, you could spend Blackcoin, and it would treat the transaction as a Bitcoin transaction. So I have not looked into all of this stuff, but the point I want to make is that these things are being developed and that they're in beta, and I want to kind of hammer home, and now I want to talk about next. Because I want to hammer home with the fact that everybody's waiting for Ethereum, or they're waiting for BitShares, or they're waiting for whatever technology they happen to be waiting for in the Bitcoin 2.0 space. But the point is that there's some people who are already delivering on this. Okay? Blackcoin is starting it, but they're just starting it because there's a coin out there, and I hesitate to even call it a coin, that actually... They didn't just start it. They're already, they're 20 million miles ahead of the game. And that's next. NXT. Okay. And listeners of the show know I'm a huge fan. And speaking of something you can donate, Next is one of the very first coins that I allowed for donations. I was so excited about it. Still am so excited about it. And, Marc, actually, if you wouldn't mind, maybe there's people who don't know about Next even, I have new listeners that come in all the time from who knows where, and I'm glad they're here. But give a description of Next, if you would.
Yeah, I'm well trained because I went to PorkFest pumping the coin to every innocent bystander. So NXT is a new cryptocurrency. It's only 6 months old, but it succeeded in already becoming the third largest cryptocurrency. So after Bitcoin, you have LITECOIN, and then you have NXT.
Third largest. Now that doesn't mean it's valued as highly. But third largest as in most out there?
I mean, no, third largest in valuation, in how high it is valued on planet Earth.
Okay.
And NXT is valued currently at around $50 million US. And
right, altogether. Yeah.
That's the third position. The fourth position currently is probably Darkcoin, around 30 million.
Yeah, Darkcoin is such an oddity. But hey, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I always get confused between Blackcoin and Darkcoin.
Well,
yeah, me too.
Yeah, I mean, Blackcoin, the easiest thing to remember is that it's
I remember the girls in bikinis, the 50 hot women. That's all I remember about that.
Their marketing scheme?
Yeah.
Blackcoin is just, that's the proof of stake one. Darkcoin is not proof of stake.
Okay.
But anyway, go ahead, Marc.
Yeah. And the first thing I tell about NXT is that it offers a lot of innovations over Bitcoin. It is not vulnerable to a 51% attack. Not so vulnerable.
Right. Now, we mentioned Blackcoin's proof of stake. Next was 100% proof of stake before Blackcoin was. And I mean that's why it's not vulnerable to that 51% attack, right?
Yeah, because with Bitcoin you just need 51% of the mining power, and that's not that difficult to accomplish. Currently, experts estimate that you can do it for $50 million US. You can build your ASIC, the most innovative ASIC miner, and get 51% of the mining hashing power, and just basically shut down the Bitcoin network. Some others dispute these numbers and say you need at least a few 100 million, but still I find it a real problem of Bitcoin. With NXT, you need 51% of the coins that are used to validate transactions, and by estimate you would currently need to buy around 20 to 30% of all the coins of NXT, so that will cost you a lot more than $50 million US.
Yeah, this is a really important point. I want to touch on this because I think this is what a lot of people they want to attack proof of stake about, is they'll say that, well, yeah, but you can still kind of do a 51% attack. It's different how it's implemented. Okay, because instead of having all the mining power, you just have to have a good chunk of the coin, like you mentioned, 30, 20, 30, 40%, whatever, to do that. But here's the thing. The solution to a whole lot of things, in fact, the solutions to solving problems with the NSA or whatever, is to make things expensive, make it too expensive to even try. And it is so much harder to buy out an entire coin, especially one that gets a foothold like Next is doing. Okay, it is so much harder, so much more expensive to buy out a coin at that, at those rates than it is to just purchase, processing power. Like you said, creating a super ASIC or whatever the case may be, that's way more viable to do by a long shot, by orders of magnitude. It's more viable to create a super ASIC than it is to buy out that high of a percentage of a coin. And so is it perfect? No. But does it solve the 51% attack? A hell of a lot better than Bitcoin does.
I fully agree.
Stephanie, did you have any thoughts on that?
On proof of stake?
Yeah.
I'm still learning about it, honestly. I hadn't really bothered to educate myself that much about it. I mean, maybe we could have this conversation on the air, which we just talked about before we started recording the show. But I was kind of wondering, about proof of stake. Like, isn't there still some work involved? Like, a lot of people say proof of stake is green and so forth, but like you still have to have your computer running and have a client running in order to validate transactions with proof of stake.
Right, but that's a lot different. Running a client, as in running software, is a lot different from the arms race that exists within proof of work, which is you have to keep buying bigger, more, better hardware. Proof of stake eliminates really the necessities for hardware.
Yeah.
In its entirety, and so that's where it is green, because hardware is not required. I mean, you can run proof of stake on a Raspberry Pi. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could have the most basic machine possible to do that kind of validation. And so I think that's kind of the difference. I see your point where that, well, it's still kind of working, but the difference being is that the hardware is not the requirement.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Is there So there's this thing that people do with proof of stake coins called borrowed forging or loaned forging. What is it called?
Yeah, leased forging.
Leased forging, thank you. Where they like make their coins available to other people to use to validate transactions, kind of like someone might purchase a mining contract or something like that from a ASIC farm. Would be the analogous thing in proof of work. So I guess what I wondered is like, would it be easy to, through a leased forging type of arrangement to get 51% of the coins, to do a 51% attack? Has anyone done a 51% attack on a proof of stake currency, or is it just too new, perhaps?
I'm not aware of it ever occurring, but Marc, do you have any response to that?
No, I never heard about anyone coming close to 51% ownership of the coins. No.
Right.
No.
I mean, certainly, yes, it is. No question, it's a danger that someone could buy out an entire coin, an entire ecosystem, an entire coin. Or I should say economy, not ecosystem. But again, the expense just blows away what you'd have to do with proof of work. So, now, Marc, I think go ahead.
Yeah, it's actually a whole different philosophy, proof of stake. It's not just about the mining architecture. That's just a result. The underlying philosophy of a proof of stake is that the power lays with the coin holders and nobody else.
Right.
Yeah. And so the power to validate transactions lays with the coin holders. The power to change other stuff lays with the coin holders. There is also a voting system being built so that if ever important decisions need to be made, that you can vote, and how many coins you have will decide how strong your vote is.
Right.
So those that own the coin decide, and not those that run services around it.
Yeah, exactly. So now Next runs on proof of stake, so it has this very decentralized nature. I hesitate to use the word democratic, but I mean, in this, I mean it in a good way. That like you said, the coin holders call the shots. Okay, and so with that in mind, I think that's a huge advantage. I think it's far superior to anything else being done out there. And NXT has been, as far as I know, the first successful implementation of these ideas and of that new philosophy that you talked about. And I think that's really exciting. Now, people will say, what about PPCoin or what are they, PureCoin? But that's actually a hybrid. That's not completely proof of stake. That's proof of work and proof of stake. So that would not qualify as the originator or as the trailblazer in this area. So,
yeah. And you have a strong leader, PeerCoin. They are the first, so they certainly deserve credit. But then, is his name Sonny King?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a strong leader. So that goes against that the power lays with the vote holders.
Right.
NXT does that from the ground up. The whole philosophy is that it must be very decentralized, and that the power lays with a lot of different people that own coins. And so from the start, the developers or several of them, and there is no culture of admiration of a certain leader.
Right, and the guy that created it, BC Next, he's gone. In April of 2014, he says, "Okay, here's my baby. I'll see you later. You know, it's up to you. It's up to the community what happens with this." And so, yeah, they're just like Bitcoin. There's no Satoshi Nakamoto or whatever. He left too. It's very similar in that regard. In fact, some people, this might be a little off topic, but some have theorized that BC Next might have been Satoshi Nakamoto again. I mean, do you have any ideas as to who BC Next might be? No.
The people think that. I think the work is genius.
Right.
The innovation of proof of stake, I think, is the biggest innovation in cryptocurrency since the invention of Bitcoin. So you must really be ahead of the game to build something like that. So he certainly is a genius.
Right. Now, I mean, and definitely Next is so far ahead of the game. I mean, what are some of the features that are available right now, that people can take advantage of that I think really other people are promising? I mean, what can Next do?
Yeah, so with Next you can already just launch an IPO,
Right.
It's one click on a mouse. You can send NXT coin, but you can also just launch an asset. You pay 1,000 NXT, which is $50 currently. You decide how many units your asset must be. Let's say 1,000 shares, and you click on the button, and voila, it's there on the asset exchange. It runs on no central server. It runs on all the clients that are installed with people.
So this is a real decentralized exchange that everybody else is just saying, oh yeah, we're going to come out with this, but it's here.
It's here, and every day around 4 or 5 assets are launched today by anonymous people mostly, and the total is now 160 assets that are active. Some of them, or most of them, actually half of them, are scams or worth nothing, but the other half is interesting. You know?
Right. Well, I mean, that's with anything new you're going to get. I mean, like a lot of these altcoins, admittedly, are scams. They've come and gone. In fact, that's something too with Next is that I noticed on the 4th of July, it seemed like there were quite a few people tweeting saying that they were like really clearing out their holdings in a lot of cryptocurrencies. And so they started listing off, these are the only ones that are serious. These are the ones I'm going to hold on to. And I think LITECOIN was in that. Amazingly, somehow Dogecoin was. Blackcoin was in that. But Next was one of the ones that everybody said, this one is serious. This is the real deal. Now, why didn't they say Ethereum or BitShares? Again, they don't exist. They don't necessarily exist. I mean, yeah, BitShares, you can get BitShares PDS and all that, but you can't actually really, go out and really do something as to where, like you're saying, there's already a decentralized exchange with Next.
Indeed, and a client that works. I find that very important. I just downloaded it, install it, and I have a client that works.
Actually, the link is in the show notes to look at the clients available for Next. So you can check that out at sovereigntech.com. Go ahead, Marc.
Like sometimes I do question myself, am I overlooking something? You have a lot of competition, Mastercoin, Counterparty, and BitShares, but then I go to their website, I try to download the client, install it, and it always goes wrong. I'm a lazy guy, I admit, but I watch from the eyes of the customer,
Right.
That's how I look at investing, and if I can't do it with a few clicks, then the end user can't do it neither,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something, now you and I have both been interested in Next really almost since its inception, I think is fair to say. And I admit that originally the Next client did look a little rough. Like it ran in a browser. That was the only way you had to install Java. There was a bunch of really clunky stuff. Now, the reason I think that this was so, again, we're only talking about in the first couple months. After that, the clients that were coming out were stunning. They were gorgeous, and they had great developers coming out with all this stuff. But they already had so many features ready for Next that I think they were heavily concentrating on having features available and ready to go, that they weren't necessarily doing a whole lot of polish on the clients themselves. But now, these are, in my opinion, the single most beautiful wallets or clients that you can get for any coin out there. They are stunning. And I mean, that's really, in my opinion, as someone goes and installs the official Next client, I think you look at that and you just go, why don't I have any of this? Because it is that good looking and it is that capable. The decentralized exchange can be done in it, all this stuff. Amazing. So, sorry, go ahead, Marc. What other features?
Well, what I like is the messages. So you can just, of course, send and receive your coins, NXT coins.
Right.
But you can also to other people send messages, and it's fully encrypted. I like that. Okay, it's not used a lot yet, but I think it will go up over time because, I never succeeded in doing PGP encryption.
It's a pain in the ass.
I've certainly tried 5 to 10 times to do it, and it never worked. And now I finally have it, and I don't see the word PGP even mentioned anywhere. So I think that's very good. But I think the global vision to decentralize everything and to have everything in one application, just like the iPhone successfully had a lot. You have a lot on your phone and you use it a lot. Well, I think the same will happen with this cryptocurrency. Okay, if you here you have in your account your coins, but you also have your private messages. encrypted.
Right.
You also have your private stocks, assets, funds, bonds that you buy all behind your private key. I think NXT will, and they will add to that. So they are now busy building a very interesting, a decentralized eBay kind of system, so that you can run a shop that is decentralized.
So you'll have your shopping experience inside the client too.
Well, yeah, that's not needed for that's a lot of shops are taken down if you trade
Silk Road.
Yeah, for example, and so if that's run decentralized, then that's very powerful.
Yeah, I agree. And also, something else, NAMECOIN is a coin I'm a fan of, but like Next, actually a lot of these 2.0s are planning on implementing this, but Next can actually do what NAMECOIN did, where there's like a separate address system to some degree. And like I can type in fact, I bought Sovryn Tech with NXT. It cost me one NXT, and I can go into my browser, I can go into the address bar, and I can just type in NXT space Sovryn Tech, and it takes me to sovryntech.com.
Wow.
And that's so cool. And it's already there. NAMECOIN could do that too, but you're talking about how everything is available kind of in this one platform to do. I think that's really exciting. To have that. I agree. Are there...
It seems like, to me, just listening to this whole conversation, like you're kind of running down the things that Next can do that Bitcoin can't.
Right.
We've got proof of stake, we've got the decentralized exchange, we've got this potential marketplace with decentralized, you got websites like NAMECOIN-like feature, a nice looking client with a cool interface,
Yeah, and that client is also going to be available online too, so where it can just run in your browser, but it can be beautiful this time. But that's presently in testnet, admittedly. But regardless of what's in testnet, there's so many features that exist right now, ready to go, ready to do everything. And I agree with you, Marc. It's frustrating that no one ever talks about this damn thing. It's got it all. Everything that everybody's so excited about that they wanted. Oh, I can't wait to do this with Ethereum. I can't wait to do this with BitShares. I can't wait to do this with this. Just do it now with Next. It's already here for you. It's ready to go. And I'm curious, what exactly, what do you think leads to this? Why do you think that Next is just not getting the press?
Yeah, I think... it has a problem with a marketing problem. So some people, we don't have the famous people. That's a problem. The developers don't talk about it, so they have rejected a lot of possible interviews with big media.
Right. But this is kind of a plus, I think, because Next is so decentralized, even in its development, that like coming up with somebody who could even be a quote unquote figurehead, or someone that could get the message out, or some degree of marketing could happen. It doesn't happen because it takes a while for everybody to kind of agree or whatever. Now some people would see that as a bad, but I see that as a good. Like that's a very good thing, and I don't mind that it doesn't necessarily have a figurehead. But then people, I don't understand why not average, but just everyday people, not developers or whatever, why they're not talking about it, why they're not finding out about it. It blows my mind. I hear Blackcoin get talked about a whole hell of a lot more than I do Next. Blackcoin doesn't have any names behind it. So I don't understand the difference. I admittedly, and I don't know if you want to say this, Marc, maybe you don't agree with it or maybe you do, but I'm inclined to believe that, I wonder how many people feel threatened by the existence of Next because it is so far ahead of the game in development.
Yeah, but you mentioned Blackcoin is talked about. Is that so? Yeah.
Yeah, I found that's how I first learned about it, was because it was so talked about. Next I had to find out through my own research, but Blackcoin, crossed my radar in a multitude of ways.
Yeah. The best theory I can come up with is indeed that it is a real threat to Bitcoin, and therefore, but it's just speculation on my part.
Sure.
I don't know, but I think it will happen. It was the same with Bitcoin in the Goldberg community. This was not talked about, even though it was big innovation.
Right.
And when there was a question about it, it was dismissed. But it was just not talked about, and only when Bitcoin was successful the last year in 2013 they start to talk about it. So I think NXT will have to prove itself first on its own powers before
right.
A Bitcoin community that is already invested heavily into Bitcoin will embrace it.
Yeah, I want to touch on some of that, but Stephanie, do you have any thoughts? Why do you think that nobody is talking about Next?
I think it's just because they do actually have a truly decentralized community, and they don't have someone who's like the next marketing person, like a figurehead or anything like that. It really relies on just a community of people, and that has its real upsides, like decisions are considered really carefully, sometimes to the point where nothing gets done, but that's okay because it's still being talked about. But also,
I'll take that over some cocky developer running roughshod over my economy.
Right.
I would take that.
Yeah, but I'm saying like other platforms, like for instance, if you look at Ethereum or BitShares, those are companies. They actually have like a marketing person, and
right.
Despite the fact that they are interested in creating distributed autonomous organizations, they're not there yet, and they are actual companies. And Next is not a company; it's a project that was started by an anonymous person, and there are people who are passionate about it and want to promote it, but there's no one officially like making that their job. So I think I honestly think that that's the reason. These other organizations have a real coordinated ability to do a marketing push and to do like just the conventional methods of marketing something. And if you look at the case of Ethereum, like you can't even use Ethereum yet except in beta, right? They have their alpha clients out there. I think they're on like version 4 of it, but you can't buy Ether. It's pretty limited in what you can do with it. Whereas with Next, you can do a lot with it right now, but it's just, they don't really, there's not the tooting their own horn kind of aspect to it.
Right.
And that's okay. Cause you could say that in the long run, that will get Next more credibility because they're actually being humble about it. Mm-hmm. They're not like puffing themselves up without actually having any product, Well,
Bitcoin didn't need any of this
mm-hmm.
to get where it did. Bitcoin just had a bunch of passionate people who weren't even developers.
It's true, but it didn't have any competitors at the time who did have
right.
coordinated marketing efforts.
Sure.
So yeah, maybe Next will sort of be in it for the long haul, like Bitcoin was, But Bitcoin did do a slow build. Bitcoin came out in 2008 or 2009, and it really didn't start to take off. Look at where it was 2 years later in 2011. It still wasn't very popular. It was pretty relatively right. unknown even 2 years later. So Next is only 6 months old, or maybe a little more than that. Where is it going to be in 2 years? Is it going to start gaining steam like Bitcoin did? Is that going to happen faster?
Well,
I think you're right to compare the two, Brian, but it's a little bit of a different situation because of the lack of competitors that Bitcoin had.
Sure, I can understand that, but I think Marc's point is valid, or I think your 2 points are complementary in that Marc is saying Next is going to happen. It's going to reach that level of adoption, and that's really all it needs. It doesn't need any more tech. It doesn't need any more technology. It's going to keep developing it anyway, just because the developers care. But it's just looking for that adoption. And I agree with you, Marc, that I think it's just going to happen, just like it did with Bitcoin, because I see the paths very similar. And in fact, Bitcoin kind of did have one guy. It had Roger Ver, right, who's a great guy, and he was kind of the Bitcoin Jesus. I got to say, Marc, I think you are the next Jesus. You are the NXT Jesus. You have been working this currency so hard, and yes, you're an investor, but you readily admit to that. And you have no problem saying, yeah, I'm invested in this, but I want to tell you why I'm excited about it, because of all the abilities that it has. So it's not like you're doing a pump. You're genuinely, you've got the goods on your side saying, no, look at what Next can do.
Yeah, indeed. I talk my book, and I'm happy to do so because my book is very important. What I invest in, and
you're talking about your portfolio.
Yeah, my portfolio. I invest for profit, but I also invest to improve the world, and I think these two go together. I think NXT will happen just because of the way I see how people respond when I tell them about it. At Porkfest, 9 in 10 people say, I didn't know that NXT existed even. I never heard about it. Are you serious? This is the 3rd largest cryptocurrency. They are perplexed and they are very interested and they want some free coins from me. And so I think actually it's going to happen over the coming half year to a year that people in the Bitcoin community will start to talk about it, and it will go up a lot. I think.
I agree with your assessment. I agree with your time frame too. I think that is about when this stuff's going to start doing some pretty serious build, because the passionate people are coming. They are. You're creating a lot of them, like you said. Because that's all it is these people just got to know about it. They got to hear about it, and I am more than happy to do it on this show, no doubt about it. I want to go back a little bit and just touch on another reason, perhaps I think that maybe where the NXT adoption is an issue, and I think part of that might come from the fact. Now, again, this is something where I see it as a bonus, as a plus, not as a negative. Is that this is Next is completely new code. It's written in Java. It's not in Qt. It's not being done in everything, because so many of these altcoins are just based off of the Qt client for Bitcoin, right?
Yeah. Not only the code, also the design. When you open the LITECOIN, it looks exactly the same.
Oh yeah, even like Blackcoin, it looks exactly like. It's not pretty at all. And there's something to be said for delivering. Like the reason why is Apple so huge, because it's simple, it's gorgeous. And I think the next client now is to that point where it is certainly that. Like I said, I'm not kidding when I say it blows away every other client out there for whatever coin you're talking about. Unless you're talking about like Armory for Bitcoin or whatever, but that's had years to get developed. We're talking months. Next looks fantastic. But I think that actually it being written in different code. Admittedly, I had heard that like when BTerra accepted the Next on its exchange, which was a huge boon for Next. That's great. And when they did, from what I understand, they were writing out handbills for the exchange because the code is so different that they couldn't implement it into their system very well. But they knew that Next was serious, that it was the real thing, that it might be the next thing, and so they wanted to get it in there. So I know, sometimes I theorize if that's what it is, if it's because the code is so different that people are kind of standoffish about it. But again, I don't see that as a bad thing. That's a good thing, because it just takes the time for someone to come up with a virus that essentially, this is like biodiversity if you took it to a scientific scale, to where if everything's based off the same code, then everything can get fucked by the same problem, Right. And Next says, I'm not worried about it. Go ahead. You know what I mean? We're completely different code. You'd have to target Next specifically to be able to do that. And again, that would be, where are the incentives for that? I don't know. So
yeah, it's as an exchange, you have to invest a lot into programmers and developers to just implement NXT on your exchange. And on top of that, NXT is actually actively building a decentralized exchange. So actually, right. NXT is the competitor of their own exchange in the future. So it's a big hurdle to take for exchanges. But indeed, BTER, a Chinese exchange, did it.
Yep.
And they are making a lot of money because most of these coins on their exchange is free trading. But with NXT, they charge 0.5%. But still, they are the largest exchange for NXT. They make a lot of money on it, and they deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to plug something. If you go to sovryntech.com, on the left-hand side, there are some affiliate links. One of them is for BTer. And if you use that affiliate link, everybody gets some BTer points, they're called. threshold, which helps with transaction fees. Really handy if you want to use that. If you're wanting to grab some Next, I definitely I think BTER is really top notch as far as this stuff goes, and they are really visionary, I think, in accepting Next so early on. I agree. They, like you said, they definitely deserve the money. So, I mean, do you see, I guess it wouldn't be fair if we didn't, while we're talking about, and really we're painting a very beautiful picture of Next, but I think it's all true. But do either of you see any issues with Next? Like, are there any fatal flaws? Is there a problem that you foresee that maybe needs to be solved that's not being addressed?
Well, I guess coming back to the proof of stake thing, which I've just been looking into as we've been doing the show, I saw a post on Reddit called like criticisms of proof of stake.
Okay.
And one of the ones that was raised is like, someone could do a 51% attack by buying up half the coins, but I think that gets pretty easily debunked by just saying like, if somebody tried to buy all the coins, then the price would keep going up.
Yeah, and you'd want people to buy up all the coins.
Yeah, go ahead, try that attack, because then it'll just drive the coins up.
Right, because then if you only had 5 Next, that 5 Next would be worth millions. So go ahead, buy out the currency. You're just going to make everybody happy.
Right, exactly.
Or make everybody rich, I should say.
The only one that I couldn't really understand was like Gavin Andreessen actually posted in that thread. It's called Criticisms of Proof of Stake, and it's on Reddit. And he said that miners must decide to dedicate their hashing power to just one chain with proof of work. But with proof of stake, miners could essentially do the shotgun method and dedicate their proof of stake to different competing blockchains, and there's not really a cost to doing that, and so it wouldn't incentivize against double spending. So I'm not sure if that's true, or if I completely understand that, or maybe that's been solved in newer versions of proof of stake, but that was the only one that really seemed like maybe it had a point. Did you guys?
Interesting. I would definitely...
That, I believe, is what is referred to as the nothing at stake problem.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Is that it doesn't cost the miners to allocate their stake to... Because like in Bitcoin with proof of work, the incentive is to try to not get miners to create their own blockchain that then would become the blockchain, in quotes, if they got more than 51% of the mining power and started mining on that new blockchain.
Right.
With proof of stake, he's saying that there's no cost to just allocating your stake to like any chain or multiple different chains. So if there was an attacker that wanted to create a fake chain, it wouldn't, you could just allocate your stake to that chain. Yeah,
but you're not exactly going to have miners. I mean, I think this is addressing maybe like an older idea of proof of stake that Next is really either moved beyond. I know delegated proof of stake, this wouldn't be possible. That's for sure. Mark, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it is a valid criticism, even though I don't understand it fully. But the way the NXT community responds to it gives me the impression that it's valid. But the counter arguments to it, as I understand it, is that one, it's not like costless. Indeed, you mentioned earlier also that there is some work involved. Even though you have a proof of stake and not proof of work, you still have to run a computer to do the validating of transactions, even with the proof of stake. And so if you are going to do validating different blockchains, you will need more processing power for that. So there is some work involved. That's one counter argument. But the second counter argument that I found the most interesting is that, well, there is a lot at stake because, for example, I invest in a lot of coins. I am not going to cooperate on validating another blockchain. I'm not going to drive my NXT coin into the ground. And the same is true for probably many other NXT coin holders.
So, like, you're saying if someone has a stake, which is what you have to prove in proof of stake that you have a stake, then their incentive is to not do anything that's going to wreck the value of the coins.
Yeah, and I think this is actually a great point, because this is something that a lot of people say Bitcoin will solve. Okay, because we have an issue with Bitcoin where it was very and if either of you disagree with this, that's okay, just say so. It was a very libertarian idea. even from Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper. This is a libertarian idea, and it was brought to prominence by libertarians. And so a lot of people say, a lot of people get discouraged. Stephanie, you and I get discouraged about this, I think, all the time. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that the Bitcoin community has gone, to Wall Street. It's gone to Main Street, or, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually was doing some reading earlier in the show. I just saw a blog post saying that, basically Coinbase is now like asking people, hey, where did you get your Bitcoins that you're selling on Coinbase? And where'd you get the money to buy these Bitcoins? And tell me what business you run. And,
right. So, so the anonymity,
like that
all
now.
The things that people loved about Bitcoin, the politics seem to be killing it. Okay, now the response that people have to politics killing Bitcoin is, and I agree, I think it is killing it. The response that people give is that, well, a whole bunch of libertarians own a whole bunch of coin and they're not going to let this happen. But there's a problem with that because, it's not like with Next where I think that isn't an issue, because with Next, if you're a major holder of Next, of a proof of stake currency, okay, then you actually, like you said earlier, Mark, how the coin holders actually have the say. Then you have the say. I am not going to let you do this, to my economy. As to where with Bitcoin, the point of failure isn't with the coin holder, it's with the hardware. And then things can get controlled. Regardless, doesn't matter if a bunch of, look, If libertarians hold hundreds of billions of dollars in Bitcoin, if someone does a 51% attack, it's over. Okay, it's all over for Bitcoin. Doesn't matter how much coin you hold. So, but that's only true. The argument that, well, the people that hold the coin aren't going to let it happen. The only time that's actually possible is in a proof of stake economy, which Next is. So, I get it. I see that point, and I think it's accurate. And it's a proof that proof of stake is the way you want to really go, is to where you have more direct control. Do you have comments on that, Mark?
Yeah, it's always, you get the problems always when you have a centralization of power.
Right.
And with Bitcoin, you have the foundation. But the problem with the foundation is that you have the lead developers also into that.
They're getting paid by the foundation.
Yeah. So you have a political central power there, and so that's a problem. The same with Coinbase example, you have always big exchanges popping up that are easy targets for governments, or are also central points. So there you get the corruption. If you're able to decentralize these things, then it's going to stay clean much longer. So for NXT, that means that no foundation is, I think, personally, a very good idea. The developers have certainly no interest at all to join any foundation into in NXT if someone would set that up. Exchanges, NXT has already a successful decentralized exchange, but it's not yet trading cryptocurrency. So I do hope that they realize they are working on that. But once they successfully do that, I think we have another successful decentralization point, so that people can trade currencies and fiat with each other without being bothered by violent organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And, I don't think we mentioned this earlier, but you would call yourself an anarchist, would you not?
Yes, an anarcho-capitalist and a voluntarist. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're totally on board. Folks, understand, if I'm bringing a guest onto the show in the studio with me, it's a pretty good bet that it's an anarchist that's looking for these control structures to just go away, so that I think that's fantastic to have such an attitude. But anyway, so did you, Mark, I don't think you got the chance to really answer this, but do you see any flaws with Next, something that you want to happen?
The flaw is that it's so young, only 6 months old.
Sure.
One of the lead developers is called Come From Beyond. You have other ones that are equally important, but he sometimes says strange things that sometimes I think, should I trust this guy? But then sometimes I also think he's just saying it to just make sure that the community does not value him too highly.
Right.
But there are other lead developers like Jean-Luc and Wesley that always talk sense, so that gives me confidence. But I think the biggest problem is that proof of stake only has a 6-month track record. Maybe the criticisms that there is nothing at stake is true, because I cannot follow it, the whole theoretical thing there. But maybe they are right, and tomorrow the NXT network is down and all the value disappears. It's possible. So I still have half of my coins into Bitcoin. I only invested half of my coins into NXT, and I'm gonna keep it that way.
Right. Well, I think that's interesting, but one of the beauties to a lot of these newer altcoins, and Next included, is that they are open to, and they are able to change. They are able to implement, like we mentioned earlier, Blackcoin is already moving on to a new version of proof of stake, and that's only been around a couple months, 2-3 months or whatever. So these solutions can get worked out over time, and they can be made to happen. This is something, this is a criticism that people, or not a criticism, this is a defense that people make for Bitcoin, saying that, look, this is how much is Bitcoin worth in total right now?
8 billion.
About 8 billion. Okay, so they say, look, you can't go making crazy changes here. We're talking about an $8 billion economy, and you don't want to crash this thing. Now, to some degree, I think that I understand that point. Okay, that makes some kind of sense. But at the same time, if something is broken, you need to fix it. Okay, and so I want things to be fixed. I want things to be far more secure. I would rather try and solve the problem now, especially, than, decades down the line. Which, boy, when it comes to like scalability with Bitcoin, that's going to be, that blockchain is going to get fucking huge at some point, and something has to be done about that. So I understand the conservative idea of not wanting to mess with something, but at the same time, I think the way our world works today, go ahead and do the Facebook thing where what is it? Make changes fast and break things or whatever. I'm actually kind of okay with that. Not entirely. I don't want to say that, but I'm okay with making some drastic changes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I didn't realize, it's only the last few months that I realized that actually how vulnerable Bitcoin is to a 51% attack.
Right.
And also thanks to D'Angelo from the Bitcoin World Network. He also made two very good YouTube videos about the 51% attack, not only a few months back, and how vulnerable Bitcoin is. But now that I realize it, I think it's irresponsible the way the Bitcoin developers respond to this. If it's already today, like a mining pool has over 51% of the mining power, one mining pool.
Right.
That's just hard evidence that there is a serious problem.
Yeah, and it's really just waiting to happen.
Yeah, and these are friendly parties, a mining pool, but so it's just true that you only need a few 100 million to just pull off, to shut down Bitcoin.
Right.
So I think that should be priority number one and should be solved.
Yeah.
But it's not happening. So I think it is very responsible to hedge yourself by buying some NXT or another proof of stake coin, because what will happen if this happens? Like a 51% attack on Bitcoin is successful. Well, then it will be all over the media. Bitcoin will collapse in value,
right?
Because they can keep this for weeks, no transactions possible at all in Bitcoin,
right?
And then it's all over the media. The value collapses, and it will not be just Bitcoin. It will be cryptocurrencies failed. That's the headline, and the whole cryptocurrency world, NXT included, will have years of damage.
Yeah, of public image damage.
Public image damage. Maybe it just doesn't happen in our generation.
Mm-hmm.
So technology is not everything. You also need marketing, and you also need and so I don't think that's responsible. So I think our job is now to focus on NXT, simply because Bitcoin cannot have this. Cannot take cryptocurrencies down,
Right, yeah. I agree. You want to diversify, and I want to get into this point, actually, because but before I do, to say that people are taking this seriously, Peter Todd, okay, who is a big name in the Bitcoin space, he said, look, when the 51% attack becomes viable, I'm going to sell off half my Bitcoins. And he did, like 3 weeks ago. So yeah, it's serious. People are people are fortunately sticking to their word on a lot of this stuff. But this kind of leads me into the, sort of the next thing I want to, the next thing,
please.
Yeah,
yeah.
The next thing I want to talk about, which is, it still seems like there's this extreme hate for altcoins that is still so prevalent. And I want to quickly get your guys' thoughts on this. I mean, for me, when there was less regulation on the planet, okay, we've never had a free market. Okay, or at least in recent history, in the past few thousand years, as far as we know, there hasn't really been a free market in any kind of civilized world. But when we had less regulation, you didn't have less currencies, you had more. Okay, you had thousands of currencies that all, and somehow everybody got along just fine with all these different currencies that existed at the time. And so, I'm always so shocked when Bitcoin people say, no, look, all we need is Bitcoin, nothing else. We don't want anything. No. We want our green back, but we're going to call it Bitcoin. And that's exactly what it sounds like. Stephanie, I want to go to you. I mean, how do you feel about that when you hear those kind of criticisms? These people are just like, no, only Bitcoin.
I think you're right to look at the historical examples, and as long as it makes economic sense. I said this at the next panel at PorcFest too, but as long as it makes economic sense for people to create alternatives to Bitcoin, i.e., as long as there are niches that Bitcoin isn't filling or things that Bitcoin can't do or doesn't do, and people want to be able to do those things with cryptocurrency, there are going to be alternatives created and they're going to be used. If Bitcoin was perfect and there was no need for anything else, then those altcoins wouldn't be economically viable because no one would need to or want to use them, right? Like, why use an altcoin if Bitcoin is doing the same job and it was doing it first and it's doing it better? Why use something else unless you're just a total contrarian like Brian Sovryn, which I might believe.
Yeah, I would do that.
So I think altcoins are inevitable. And I mean, just competing currencies in general are inevitable because it seems really unlikely. Yes, money has universal characteristics like it's durable, it's breakable, not breakable, divisible.
Right.
It's transportable. It's packs a lot of value into a small package or whatever physically. Like universal characteristics do apply to money, but every kind of money has some detriments. No kind of money serves the whole world perfectly. And so as long as that's the case, there will be more than one.
Yeah, I agree. No one money can serve the whole world. This is why, and Marc, I want to get to you here in a second. This is why I was a huge supporter of Aurora Coin. Now, granted, one can say Aurora Coin's not doing anything now, sure. But like Marc said earlier, sometimes it's just not an idea's time. Sometimes it takes a generation or something. But I think that, and Next actually would allow for this because for the decentralized exchange built into Next, where I think you would have local currencies that have localized features that are specific to where you are. Okay, and I think that sort of thing is going to happen. I think that is part of the wave of the future of cryptocurrencies is that they will be localized. Now they might have a similar back end like Next or Bitcoin, maybe even. But I think that is a way to go. So I agree with you. There's never just one money that serves all purposes.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of disagree with you about the localized thing because I think unless you're talking about physical goods like food and stuff, the economy is becoming more globalized and more and more stuff happens online now. Like you can get a secretary who lives in India or the Philippines and pay them online with Bitcoin or whatever. And maybe there would be different niches that would be better served by certain currencies, or certain virtual currencies. But I don't know how useful it is to specialize by locale.
Well, you see, I guess this is an area where we disagree because I think, I mentioned earlier biodiversity. Biodiversity is something you want. You don't want grain Or, you don't want Quattrotriticale growing everywhere on planet Earth. You want it growing in Russia and Canada, and that's it. Where it originally
but are there
grew.
different threats? Are there different threats to cryptocurrency in New Hampshire versus in California? I'm not sure about that. I think they face the same threats.
Let me give you a case in point, and then Mark, I do want to get to you, and if you want to respond to any of this, you can. But here's a problem in New Hampshire: the White Mountains. Okay, which we were actually all just visiting. It's beautiful up there.
Oh yeah,
it was stunning, and Mark was very gracious. We had a great time. So anyway,
lovely.
Yeah, it was lovely. So, but you're going to have internet issues in those mountains. You're going to have communications issues in those mountains. Now, you're going to have to create a currency that can handle being lost for blocks on end on its blockchain. Okay, and can't connect for who knows how long. And if you're still going to do commerce, say, within those mountains. Now, maybe you can come up with a technology that kind of solves that. But then you're so fine. You're not specieing the currency. You are going to have to specie the technology that can address the problem of the mountains. And that's what I'm saying, is that there are going to be, we don't know all the issues that there are going to be. But I think in various areas, you are going to run into problems where I think technology kind of has to be different. This is like electric cars. Look, I love the idea of electric cars, okay? But they're shit in the winter. They're shit.
Yeah.
Now, maybe they'll grow up. Maybe they'll change. But then you're going to have to create specific technology designed to handle the winter. And I guarantee you that the efficiency of cars that can run in Southern California, okay, is going to create one type of car. And the efficiency that's required to handle the winter in 25% of the world or whatever large amount of the world is going to require a very different vehicle. I mean, this is like you have SUVs and you have sedans and you have coupes. Everything serves a different purpose for the different area per se. And this happens, in areas where. Whoa. Technical glitch. Anyway, I think that's telling me to shut up. But Mark,
yeah,
I want to. You can respond to some of this, but I also want to hear how you feel when people say, Bitcoin only.
Yeah, I just want to say first that I think it's better to call Next NXT. I call it Next also, but it's confusing.
I agree.
I started calling it NXT, as Tyzen has recommended, also a marketeer in the NXT community. But I think indeed, at first I was a Bitcoin only guy, but I've started, I think you make a very good point. I think what it comes down to is people create value and they want to be rewarded. And so if you are a smart guy and you're able to adopt cryptocurrency somewhere, let's say in your mountains example,
right?
But you need to build special technology for that. Are you wise to promote Bitcoin there, or is it wiser to just launch a new coin with your underlying technology? What will give you the biggest reward? The latter, of course, because there you have all the coins and so you will make a lot more money. So what we will see is that those that are able to create value via cryptocurrency, many of them will choose to launch a new coin in order to profit maximally, and it will be successful.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, I agree, and so I mean, but you think you were once a Bitcoin only kind of guy, but you have, I mean, what changed that for you?
Well, I was especially frustrated with LITECOIN because in my eyes it was just a copycat, and so I was talking down on it because from my point of view it was taking value away from Bitcoin and building its own value, but actually. Partly that's true, but on the other hand, they are not an exact copy. Okay, it may be the copy of code, but it's are other people. These people are marketing to new people that seemingly adopt LITECOIN and not Bitcoin.
Right.
So they are creating value, and they are rewarded by it. So they are expanding the universe of cryptocurrency, and that's their achievement. So that's my opinion on it.
Sure. Yeah, LITECOIN's an interesting subject, and I want to kind of, one of my arguments for LITECOIN's existence Because I agree, I heard a lot of that where it's like, what's the point to Litecoin? It is a copycat, and that's very much true. It's interesting the degrees we've gone through. Because like one of my arguments for Litecoins is that, well, at least ASICs don't work against it, so it can be a more stable economy. Okay. But then now there's ASICs for Litecoin. If there's even a point to that, Litecoin's price has taken a pretty serious dive, as of recently. So, my argument for it was the idea that, look, if you wanted to test out new features and you have this copycat out there that a lot of people already accept and use, then have Litecoin be your beta test for the real world economy of Bitcoin, essentially. And that was sort of my idea. But even that, I think, I'm not necessarily holding on to that notion so much anymore either. And I feel bad because, I like to make a lot of predictions on this show on Sovryn Tech. And one of the ones I made, and I was referencing an article saying that 2014 would be the year of Litecoin. And honestly, I'm wrong. I think I'm dead wrong because I don't think this is the year of Litecoin. And I think Litecoin, when you get such game changers like NXT that just come out with so many features out of nowhere, I think that a lot of these more copycat coins become redundant, and they got to have something more. You either have to be first or you have to be best, and Litecoin is neither. I mean, Stephanie, do you have any thoughts on that, on Litecoin?
Well, I appreciate, okay, so from the beginning, I think Litecoin has kind of been shifting the goalpost about their argument as far as why they are valuable to the public. Mm-hmm. At first they said, well, it's valuable because it's GPU resistant.
Right.
And then that obviously wasn't the case with the script mining algorithm.
Right.
And then it was, well, we're ASIC resistant. No, now they have ASICs for Litecoin. And then it was, well, no, we are a really good development team, which is true. They are very talented.
Yes, they are.
Good development team.
Yeah, Warren Tagami is amazing.
Yeah, and Charlie Lee. I mean, they're great. And so now the argument is, well, we maintain Litecoin as far as the code goes. We pay attention to the code and we are good stewards of it. And we maintain this tightly used software that is the second largest cryptocurrency and is also kind of providing a sandbox for Bitcoin. And they actually have contributed Bitcoin code, the Litecoin developers have.
Right. Now that's the area where I agree that it can hold value.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree, with all those arguments to a certain extent. At the time when it came out, script was an innovation. Mm-hmm. It was something new. It was almost like proof of stake. It was just something that wasn't tried in Bitcoin that, hey, maybe this could be better for whatever reason. Let's try it out. And it was tried out, and indeed it was useful, at least to some extent. And also I agree with the idea that it's better to have another large network that is well-maintained and serious, just in case something does happen to Bitcoin. It could be a great backup. It could also help support the Bitcoin code, or they could support each other, Bitcoin and Litecoin, to have different arenas to sort of test out new features in. Now, and I said they've been shifting the goalposts from the beginning as far as what their argument is for their usefulness, but to an extent, it really doesn't matter because people find value in Litecoin for some reason. Everybody probably has some different reason for finding value in it, but people do find value in it to the point where these tokens that were created are now worth, what is it, $7 or $8, and at one point were worth $50. That was what people were willing to pay for them because they believed that it had that value. And that's where the value comes from with cryptocurrencies or with any currency. It's people's belief that it does have value. So I guess it doesn't, Litecoin can kind of say whatever they want about why they're useful, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is that people do find value in it, and that's reflected in the volume and the price to a certain extent.
Sure.
And the growth and how many people use it. So why do people find Litecoin useful? Then that becomes the question. I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I don't really know. I mean, maybe they see those arguments about the good development team and that having it useful, be like a useful backup or brother or cousin to Bitcoin, that they support each other. Maybe they just are speculating on it. I really don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe everybody has sort of a different reason.
Yeah, that's fair to say, I think. I think what happens for me, and this is tough because a lot of people, in fact, we all hosted, Marc was very kind and had you and I both on a Next an NXT panel at PorkFest this year. And one guy came up. It's like, why are you complaining about Bitcoin? What's wrong with Bitcoin and all this stuff? And it's easy I think, for people to sound like, for myself anyway, to sound like I hate Bitcoin or I hate LITECOIN or I hate all these things. And look, I don't hate them. I totally appreciate where they came from. It's just there's things that are coming out when stuff comes out like NXT that has so many features, so many exciting things going on. Yeah, it's like a sequel that's better than the original. You still love the original, but oh man, Empire Strikes Back was so goddamn good that's my movie, baby. You know what I mean? It's not hating. It's just like, let's move on. Marc, do you have any comments on all this?
Yeah, I just want to thank Stephanie for helping me see Litecoin last year, because I was hating Litecoin, you really helped me see that there is room for more, and that competition is important, and even in cryptocurrencies, and so thanks. Yeah.
Do you still look at it as a competition, or do you look at it as more of a cooperative thing?
Well, I would call it competition. I'm a hardliner. How do you call it?
I don't think it is necessarily competition, because it may be co-opetition, something like that, like a mixture of competition and cooperation, because I do think these cryptocurrencies can all kind of learn from each other. They can look at what one another are doing and take the best things out and try to implement it themselves. At the same time, maybe they are kind of competing for people's enthusiasm or dollars or the developer's time or whatever. But it's not, I don't see it as strictly competition. And actually, maybe this is like a totally different direction for this conversation, but this conversation always reminds me of the idea of like polyamory and monogamy, because there are people who say that love isn't limited to one person, the more the merrier, jump in, as long as nobody's jealous, everything's fine, have as many partners as you like. And then there are people who say, well, yeah, but time is limited, you can only relationships take work, it's hard to maintain relationships with more than one person at once. And then there are people who say, oh, it's impossible to maintain more than one relationship at once. Any second relationship takes away from the first one. And so I think you see those attitudes with regards to the way that people see cryptocurrencies as well. And so that's why Brian, I think, calls them Bitcoin monogamists, the people who are married to the idea of Bitcoin.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting correlation, I think. That occurs, but of course also to add on to that analogy, there's people who can't possibly stay in one relationship. They're all over the damn place. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I want to quickly touch on the fact that Stephanie, you really do. You have a very unique voice, and I'm not turning this into a circle jerk here by any means. But you need
some help for that.
No, right? But you really, you're on Let's Talk Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Okay. And this episode's pretty much turning into all Bitcoin. I had other topics I wanted to bring up, but honestly, I'm not even seeing the point to getting to others. I do want to talk more about Marc's investing, but I think that's related to all of what we're talking about. But anyway, but you are on Let's Talk Bitcoin. You're on Free Talk Live. I mean, you reach out. You literally, more so than me by a long shot, you reach out to thousands upon thousands of people all the time.
I'm not that famous.
Well, I think you underestimate yourself, but I am impressed.
I agree.
Yeah, I am impressed that you bring up LITECOIN. I mean, Marc already admitted you converted him. You're the only person I've really heard talk about Next on air.
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard.
And not even that much.
Yeah,
I've brought it up.
Right.
Yeah.
I heard Adam Levine mention it at a fireside chat. At a fireside chat.
Yeah.
Not,
I remember that.
Yeah, it didn't. This goes back to where we were saying that really, how does it just doesn't give enough press. But I do want to say that you really there have been some voices out there saying, hey, what about Next? What about next? Or with other cryptocurrencies, with other technologies that have come around, like LITECOIN. What about LITECOIN? What about LITECOIN? And you've always been a pretty staunch supporter of a lot of these things, and I think some credit is due for that. And I know you personally, and you don't get bought out, because sometimes I think some of these big names out there get bought out by these other cryptocurrencies, whatever they may be. No need to name names. And then they just all talk, sweetness and light about all these things. You are genuinely one of those independent voices out there on any of these matters. And granted, you're also heavily invested in Next, yes?
I wouldn't say heavily invested, but I mean, it's almost irrelevant. I think like if someone holds a cryptocurrency, then it's going to influence them in some way, even if they're holding a little bit, to Next or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah, and I'll admit to myself that, and I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to do this, because I think Marc's going to get into this in a minute as to what he holds. He's been talking about it all night, actually, thankfully, and I really respect him for that. But I'll admit, the only coins I really have any real stake in are Blackcoin. I do have Dogecoin. They were given to me. I do not. You can't even donate Dogecoin to Sovryn Tech. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm not even going to go there. But I have Blackcoin, a degree of Bitcoin, and I have NXT. And NXT is actually my strongest holding. And so, I think it's good for people to know behind the scenes what people have. In fact, in the tech world...
Okay. Yeah, we can do full disclosure, sure.
I mean, you don't have to, okay? Because
I'm not going to say how much I have.
No. There's no call. There's no need for
I'll
that.
just say what I have.
Yeah, that is not necessary by any stretch. But what, in the tech world, in tech news, actually, there is kind of a rule that goes around to where, like Leo Laporte and a bunch of those guys, where they say, we don't deal in tech stocks because of people's concern that they are going to talk from vested interest. I understand that point, but I don't think that's accurate. If you're buying into something, it's generally because you're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, exactly. Would you want someone talking about something that has no interest in it in whatever way? Like, would you want someone like... I don't think it's possible to be just a totally dispassionate observer.
No, you can't.
Like, you're going to have biases. You might as well just be upfront about them. It doesn't mean you can't invest in something that you think is really exciting or
because like
revolutionary.
Exactly. Like, say you're a tech journalist, okay? And that's important in the cryptocurrency world to be a tech journalist. If you're a tech journalist, look, if you own an iPhone, guess what? You just said what team you're on. You just said what you're interested in. You want every feature and app and new technology that comes out to be on your iPhone. Okay? So you have vested interest. Fine, that's great. You didn't buy any stock in Apple, but you really did when you purchased that iPhone. Okay? That was you tacitly saying, I want things for this.
Yeah, okay? That's emotional investment.
Yeah, so I agree with you. Nobody is a blank slate. So, Stephanie, before we get to Marc, did you want to talk about like what you hold in? I think people would actually be interested to hear that.
Sure. Okay, so I have Bitcoin, obviously, LITECOIN. At one point, I had Feathercoin, but I got rid of my Feathercoins. Let's see. I have a little bit of Proto shares. Or, BitShares, PTS, whatever it's called now, Angel Shares.
Yeah, I actually have a couple of those, admittedly, but go ahead.
Yeah. SafeCoin, that's the only one on the Mastercoin thing I have. I don't have Mastercoins. What else?
SafeCoin is from MadeSafe, huh?
Yeah, that's the MadeSafe crowd
you
sale
essentially,
thing.
Right. You have MadeSafe coins, which are stakes in SafeCoin.
Right, yeah.
Like you can trade those
coins
out.
Aren't out yet.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, and that's something I'm also very interested in too. But go ahead, Stephanie.
NXT and at one point I had Terra coins, but I no longer have any Terra coins.
I used to mine Terra coins. Oh God!
Did you ever get a block?
No, I did not.
Wow.
I got some from a faucet or whatever, but TerraCoin, boy, what a hoot. Anyway, I totally like ran that more or less as a joke, but anyway, go ahead. There's episodes of Sovryn Tech called TerraCoin.
You were kind of excited about it at one point, but like you're just a contrarian. You just like whatever hipster altcoin is out there.
It brought a lot of fans to the show, actually naming it TerraCoin back
Did it
then.
Really?
But that was like a year and a half ago. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Stephanie. I apologize.
Yeah, that's NAMECOIN. I have NAMECOin too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have NAMECOin too. I keep forgetting about NAMECOin because that's really
and
not
Next, of course.
Right.
I don't know if I said that yet.
You did, but that's okay.
So that's actually a lot. Like I sort of had to think about this because I kind of like it's hard to keep all of them in your mind at once. It's like, the polyamorist who's dating too many people and can't remember all his girlfriends. Yeah.
Yeah. But like NAMECOin is one that I always forget to mention because it's not a competitor. It's complementary to Bitcoin. I mean, it's the closest thing I think we have to a side chain that there is, and I don't think side chains are ever going to exist. So anyway, I do always forget about that. So I'm glad you mentioned it. But now, Mark, I want to get to you, okay? Because your portfolio is totally out in the open for people to see.
Yes.
So they can follow your thought process. You do videos, you do all this stuff. I think it's fantastic. In fact, I even coined it as soon as you were explaining to me how you do this. I was like, oh, this is open source investing. People can look at your code, the code of you. And I think that's pretty exciting. And I'd like to hear more about it.
Yeah. Before I dive into that, I just want to add something to the discussion about. So I think we will have a world in the future where cryptocurrency is comparable not to currencies today, where you have just a few very big currencies in every nation, but it will be more like the stocks we have today, where you have a few major stocks, Apple, Microsoft, big oil companies. You have a few major stocks, but you have a lot of small stocks also. I think cryptocurrencies will look like that because everybody that creates value in cryptocurrency, it is wise to create your own currency if you have something unique. If you offer unique value, same with companies. If you solve a real problem as a company and people have the best deal with you, you will exist as a company. People will choose you, and the same will be true for cryptocurrency. And so I think that's where we are going to. But
by the way, speaking of which, I forgot one: LTB coins.
Oh yeah,
I have some LTB coins.
That's a whole other conversation. So, but I just want to touch real quick. Yeah, Dan Larimer, in his genius, and this guy is a genius. He's actually made that claim that Bitcoin itself isn't even currency; it's really a stock. And so that's an interesting point to what you're saying, is that that's where we're heading, and I think you might be right.
Yeah, but I also think that as with companies, you need strong fundamentals. You always have periods of hypes where all stocks go up in value, but then you get busts and all stocks go down. And those that don't create real value, that don't solve a real problem, that are not competitive, will die.
Right.
And the same will be true for cryptocurrency. So me as an investor, I did buy some LITECOIN because I thought the argument was strong that it is a backup to Bitcoin, but now that I start to invest heavily into NXT and understand it, I see that this is a much better backup to Bitcoin. So I did sell my LITECOIN because for me personally, the fundamentals are not strong enough anymore. And and the same is true for Peercoin that I also held because it offered something different. But then NXT does it much better, so I sold that too. So, okay, so that's my situation, and so I'm also only into Bitcoin, NXT, and then also a little bit of gold and silver. But it's basically 30% Bitcoin of my portfolio, 40% NXT, so that's a total of 70%, and then the rest is some gold and silver and some cash. So actually it's 80% crypto and 20% gold and silver and some cash.
That is so ballsy. And I respect it.
And that's the real estate included, which I sold.
I mean, this is the thing. People would say, well, he's heavily invested, so of course he's going to talk about it that way. Look, this is risk on a personal level. That is more reason to listen to the guy than it is to not. So
you're putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, really. So I find that to be impressive. And also, I just real quick, I want to say that I think you raise a great point about like the fundamentals changed for you, like with Litecoin. Like it wasn't enough anymore. And this is just evolution. This is how things work. You find out that kings and queens don't work anymore. So you go on to another system, then you go on to another system, then you realize you don't need a system at all. And so I think this always occurs. To stick with one thing is crazy. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so I started. I looked for a decade to find something that I'd like to do and that makes money. Mm-hmm. I tried many different things. I failed so many projects and so many startups. But then I was also busy with investing, and when the crisis happened in 2008, and most investors lost 50%, I only lost 10% because I saw the bank crisis coming beforehand, and I had invested a lot in gold, silver, and not in stocks. And so I only lost 10%, and that gave me the confidence to start spreading the knowledge I have about investing. I started a blog in 2009, and from the start, I wanted to share my portfolio, because so many investment gurus, they have a lot of talk, but they don't share their portfolio, and in fact, many of their calls are wrong. They are losing money instead of making money.
Yeah. And this is actually interesting too, because you have in the investing world, you have what are called like dirt sheets. Okay, or you have where they, people like these investing papers that go out that are really popular all around the world, and it's all these people, and a lot of them are really this is where it becomes a problem with vested interest. Is you're showing everybody, you're being open about everything that you're investing. These people keep quiet, and they are leading you with their papers. They are leading you to where they want you to buy for their own benefit. And what they're going to do is this is how pump and dumps happen. These are how all these crazy things happen. But in your case, like you said, you're frustrated. Nobody shows their portfolio to really see. It's like, no, do they really mean that, what they're saying about this stock, or what they're saying in this case about that cryptocurrency and whatever? And you're showing, yes, you mean every word you say.
Yeah. Indeed. I'd like to say how it went, the evolution. So,
yeah, please.
See, the problem in investing is indeed that almost nobody outperforms true inflation, which I estimate to be around 5 to 6%. That prices go up per year in the US as well as in Europe, and you have to have a higher return on your capital just to keep up with inflation. So a real return is anything above 6%. So you need to have at least 8% to 10% to make real profit in investing. And from all the newsletters that share their portfolio, which is only about 200 newsletters in the world, only a few of them, like 1 to 5, are able to outperform 6-7% per year.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it seems to be like, in my eyes, like a lot of the investment world is just focused on very safe, like keeping your capital, not necessarily growing it as much. Or I mean, maybe they'd like to grow it, but the reality is, like on average, you're not going to grow it much.
Not a lot of risk.
Well, the problem is
the permanent portfolio, and especially, I think that's the whole goal of it, is avoiding risk. It's like preserving your capital.
Indeed. I was also an advocate of the permanent portfolio, but I recently sold it for Bitcoin because indeed it is a very good protector of capital, but it is also a very good protector of making money. So no risk, no gain.
It protects you from making money.
Yes.
Yeah. So the permanent portfolio, just real quick, is the idea of like you have 25% in one thing, 25% like in gold and silver, 25% in bonds, maybe 25% in something else, and it's when one rises the other falls, or when one falls the other rises, and it's supposed to be very safe. But like you said, no risk, no gain. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very good preserver of capital, but indeed you won't make money. And I really do want and need to make money.
Yeah.
I live from my investments, so I need to have a return that is higher than true inflation. The permanent portfolio does not succeed in that. Those are hard facts. The returns of the permanent portfolio are only on average around 7%, and that's just 1% or 2% above true inflation. So that's not good enough. But I failed myself from 2008 till 2012, that is 4 years in a row, my average return was only 6%. When I was sharing my portfolio publicly,
right.
My average return was only 6%. So it wasn't good enough. So I was getting really warm that I would fail as an investor. And that's one of the reasons why I kicked out the permanent portfolio, because it put me on the wrong path. A path of preservation, not a path of growth.
Right.
So the right way to invest, in my opinion, is to take risks, but calculated risks. That means you bet based on the risk-reward ratio. So the better the risk-reward ratio is, the more capital you allocate. This is actually a scientific method to invest. It's called the Kelly method, and it is mathematically proven that this is the best way to have optimal returns. That means to allocate your capital in such a way that you have the best growth. The problem with that, however, is that it is very volatile.
Right.
So you have to, because indeed, but that's part of the game. You see, I take an example to not investors, but to entrepreneurs, because those are the only people that make real money in this world.
Yes.
And the way they approach things is that they invest their time and their energy and all their capital into their company, and they watch it every second of the day, and they make it grow.
Right.
And that's what I'm doing more and more. That's why I'm talking about NXT today, because I've decided to do that myself, to allocate my capital concentrated into those things that I really believe in.
Yeah, so you're taking an entrepreneurial approach to investing, and you're being very active in what you are passionate about to grow. And they are your investments at the same time. Is that fair? Does that sound?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I hedge my bets a bit. So I do have also Bitcoin. I have also gold, silver. But indeed. That's what I do.
Well, nothing wrong with diversification, in my opinion.
Yeah. For me, I only started succeeding in investing in 2013 when I decided that I would not become a professional investor, because I was long planning to start a fund to attract people's money.
Right.
And I think all these things play in your mind unconsciously, because the idea of starting a fund led me to promoting and investing myself in things that are popular. And what is popular? A permanent portfolio is popular. People like security.
So they're desperate for security, but it's hard to give. You can't give it to them. That it's always going to be uncertain.
No, you can give security, but then you cannot give growth.
Yeah.
No, you know what? This is a huge point that I try to make. I don't think I do a good job of explaining it ever, but this whole idea of security holds everything down. And in fact, I mean, and I just go beyond investing. Security in general can be harmful. I mean, look at what governments around the world do in the name of security, of stability, and all this stuff. And that's where a lot of the really egregious things that get done to humanity come from this idea of, oh no, you got to be secure. And in that, I understand the need for that, but at the same time, there's no growth, there's no moving forward, and you become stagnant. And some might be okay with that, but a lot of us aren't okay with that. And so you can't make rules against all. I mean, I don't want to be stagnant. I love hearing when people want growth in their portfolios and whatever else. So certainly, I think that's a great point to bring up about that security does not allow for growth.
Yeah, and so when I was sick of the permanent portfolio, I said, okay, so I'm going to take calculated risks, and this Bitcoin thing, does that make sense? Because I was rejecting it at the time.
Right.
And indeed, it did make sense. Of course, I had all the counter arguments coming up like everybody else. Government will take it down. That's a sure thing. No, they won't. they can't. Okay, makes sense. But it's deflationary currency. That's not possible, but actually it is possible. And other objections. So yeah, I allocated 10% of my capital in 2013 when Bitcoin was valued at $13. Actually, at the end of 2012 in October, then I invested 10%. It was a very good investment, of course, but it was also not done that well because actually I invested a lot more than in gold, silver, and still the permanent portfolio. Whereas I knew that I had a 10-bagger here, that the chances were very high that this would tenfold.
Right.
I thought it would take 3 years. It happened in 6 months. My timing was wrong, but I was pretty sure that the chance was high that it would tenfold because it was valued Bitcoin at 100 million at the time, and I knew that this would go to 1 billion just based on the story. It's an amazing story. Huh?
Actually, I think I know you and I have kind of talked about this before, and I think it's an area where we disagree, and that's okay. But you said you expected Bitcoin to do that tenfold inside of 3 years. I agree with you that I predicted similarly that it would be 3 years before it got anywhere near what we're talking about, the price that it's even at now. There was the Willie report. Okay, you know about this. And Stephanie, would you be willing to kind of give like a quick recap of the Willie report?
Would I be willing? Yes.
Yeah, oh my.
Yeah, so the Willie report was a...
It was not about the length of my... Or, never mind, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, that's the Sovryn Willie report, available from sovryntech.com.
Yeah, I've already reported on that. Go ahead. Whoa!
Free Willie.
Anyway, okay.
How much is that in centimeters? Let me convert that.
So the Willie report was basically there was leaked data that came from Mt. Gox of their customer logs showing the user IDs and like all the Bitcoin trades that people did. And somebody got a bunch of people got a hold of it and did various analyses on it and came out with stories. And in particular, there was this one blogger that analyzed it. I don't know the blogger's name. I think they were anonymous, but they had this WordPress blog called The Willie Report.
Anonymous, yeah.
Yeah, I think they were anonymous. And so they just took this data, which was publicly available, and they saw some weird patterns. For instance, there was one bot that was nicknamed Willie, or it appeared to be a bot trading on Mt. Gox, that was, every 10 minutes was like buying 5 to 10 Bitcoins or something like that, and just continued buying and buying and buying. And then there was another bot that was doing these massive buys and sells, but like wasn't paying anything for Bitcoins, or was paying these really weird prices that were way below market rate. Mm-hmm. And in this way, the blogger alleged that there was just basically hundreds of millions of dollars of fake liquidity that was pumped into Mt. Gox, which drove up the Bitcoin price around November, December on all the Bitcoin exchanges, up to the peak of $1,200, and that it was all just bullshit, essentially. And whether these bots were put on Mt. Gox by a hacker or by an employee or by Marc Karpelès is anyone's guess, but they were definitely doing some really unusual trading behavior, including these, getting free Bitcoins, and also being able to trade on Mt. Gox when it was down, when no one else could trade. That was another suspicious thing about these bots.
Right. So, I mean, for me, this what happened here, it artificially inflated the price of Bitcoin. And the killer argument that for me that this is true, and again, it's okay, we can disagree on it, but is that there wasn't enough, like the math, there wasn't enough fiat to even justify the prices that Bitcoin was reaching so soon. And so, I mean, that's what it is for me. And so, this is, and the reason that I bring all this up, Marc, is that I think you were absolutely right in that it should have taken 3 years for it to, like, I think your keen investing sense, and I think honestly, if what Stephanie just described didn't occur, I think it would have been 3 years. And I was anticipating the same thing. So that's the only reason I bring that up. But I'm curious if you want to comment on why you disagree with the Willie report. I'd be very interested.
Well, I believe it's true what the observations of Mt. Gox fake trading activity. I don't dispute that.
Right.
But the way I think that the price went up at that time from $100 to $1,000 dollar, basically, due to Chinese exchanges taking off, which could also be fake trading volume.
Right.
But the order book, I think, was true, and the order book that you just can fill up. The whole world could go to BTC China and fill up the order book. The order book was bigger, or as big as the order book at Mt. Gox or Bitstamp. By the way, Mt. Gox had lost so much credibility at the end of 2013. I wasn't looking at Mt. Gox.
Right, so you're saying that the bookkeeping done at other exchanges, not just Gox, accounts for what actually happened with that price increase from 100 to 1,000.
Yeah.
Okay, I see your point. Yeah, maybe.
But I think I was also. I think we may have a very slow year this year, and maybe even 2 years, because indeed it 100-folded in 2013. The biggest rise since inception, even in 2010 or 11, since it started trading, it never went so up so much in 1 year. So we may have a slow year, but I do think that it is natural growth, simply because of if you compare it to other adoptions, television, internet, telephone. Smartphones, it is always following an S-curve, where you have at first slow adoption, which would be for Bitcoin since from 2009 till 2012. Okay. But then you get the S starts to go up,
swoop up,
and you get an acceleration into a new growth trend, which is going to continue for a few years, and then it will level off starting when half of the market has adopted it. So of course this can take 30 years, this S-curve. This can take only 10 years, as was for the smartphone. But that remains to be seen. But the new growth that has gone up in 2013, I think will continue. That means that on average it will tenfold per year by estimate, rough estimate. We just had an 100-folding, so if we have 1 year nothing, it's still a 10-folding per year.
Yeah, I'm with you in that. I think now, regardless of how it got to the price, how it got to 1,200 or 1,000, whatever it peaked at. Now, what it's valued at, I think, is probably pretty accurate. And so I think that this tenfold precipitating rises that could occur. I think your timeline now, at least for me, I would concur that can happen. And that's important to bring up because, again, like I mentioned, how people think, when we talk about, especially when people talk so passionately about certain altcoins like NXT and whatever, that somehow we're hating on Bitcoin. Look, I think Bitcoin's going to do, what, Stephanie, what did Max Kaiser say Bitcoin was going to go up to?
10,000 to 100,000 per Bitcoin, I think.
Wasn't it like millions? Didn't he say like 10 million or something?
I want to say, somewhere maybe around 1 million per Bitcoin, or 100,000 per Bitcoin.
I think that can happen. I think it can hit that, and I think it will, especially that $10,000 to $100,000 range. It's definitely going to do that. I don't doubt that for a second. So keep in mind, I don't hate Bitcoin. I do, and no one here does. Okay, and I think it's going to be, if you bought in now at 600, I think that's buy time. Because it's going to do that tenfold rise that you're talking about, Mark. I think it's going to do that easy. Okay, but at the same time, that doesn't mean just because something does really, really well, it goes up insane in price, doesn't mean that it is the end all and be all of money as we know it. Something more can come. But like I always say, even if Bitcoin's not the future, it is the easiest way to purchase the future. Okay.
Yeah, I think, for instance, like if you look at NXT, it has a potential to 1,000-fold. Right? Or 10,000-fold, right?
Yeah,
is that more likely than Bitcoin? If it is, then maybe buy some next, right?
Yeah, considering what NXT can do, I dare say the sky's the limit. But Mark, how do you feel about all of that?
Yeah, I think At first, I would have thought that, yes, Bitcoin will grow very high. I still think that, but the way it's going to go is I think others will grow higher.
Right.
So Bitcoin will very likely continue to go up because it has this tremendous momentum, and especially marketing momentum, not developer momentum.
Yeah.
So I think that will make the price will go up. But then I think something like NXT has a very high chance to go up a lot more percentage-wise and close the gap with Bitcoin faster than we expect, maybe within 2 to 3 years already, that it comes at an equal market cap of Bitcoin, and maybe in 5 years' time it is 10 times bigger as Bitcoin. I think that is possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, considering present development trajectory, Bitcoin has a cap, not necessarily a price cap, but it has a usefulness cap. There is a point where it can't do anymore at the present developer trajectory. I mean, shit can change, whatever. But with some of these other things, and this is what gets people excited about Ethereum, but again, NXT's already here and can do it all too, is that it doesn't look like there's a cap as to what could be done with the code. It could just keep going and going. New features can keep getting added on. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty exciting. I mean, Stephanie, how do you feel what do you think about Bitcoin's, price valuation in the future, like Marc said, and then with altcoins, because then Marc said how, NXT inside of 2-3 years could be, massive. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, at the moment, I'm feeling a little bit skeptical that Bitcoin is ever going to hit like 100,000 to 1 million per Bitcoin. Yeah, and the reason is because I think so much of Bitcoin's value comes from the idea that people perceived it as a way to get around regulations and controls in the financial system, especially like in the US. And it was for a while, but now it's getting kind of locked down, and even people within the Bitcoin community are openly supporting regulations that are just totally the antithesis of what Bitcoin used to be about or was meant to be about. So I think that is like taking away from the potential of value of Bitcoin, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, and I think NXT theoretically could be this, to where, a cryptocurrency or a crypto platform has to be made to where the politics cannot affect it, no matter what.
Yeah.
Because that's what people would say with what you're saying, is that, well, look, that's going to happen to any coin. Politics are going to get in the way.
Not necessarily.
But no, it doesn't have to. It can be programmed to not do that at all. And I'm hoping NXT is one of those. Did you have anything else you want to add to that?
With some more privacy features and stuff like that. And even things like distributed exchanges would definitely help, which Bitcoin hasn't had. Yeah, I mean, could it hit 10,000? Sure. Yeah, I think it will. I think it might hit 10, 20, 30,000, something like that per Bitcoin. But I would like to see a real, genuine $1,000 Bitcoin before I get hopeful about that, because the $1,000 Bitcoins that we saw before were bullshit.
Yeah, it was a month up and down.
Yeah, from pumping on Mt. Gox and these bots. So that damaged my confidence a little bit. But on the same token, the price is pretty much holding around $600 right now. And there are more mainstream merchants coming on board with Bitcoin every day. And it's getting a lot more coverage. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. It seems like right now there isn't a lot that's super exciting going on with Bitcoin per se right now.
Right.
We're seeing some big merchants come on board, but I mean, after you've seen one, you've seen them all, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, though, is that ironically, the coins that are getting accepted now, because that's really where it's interesting, is what altcoins are getting this kind of adoption by businesses. The two the two I'm seeing that are getting adoption are Blackcoin, Dogecoin, but whatever, I'm not even going there. Blackcoin and NXT are the two that are starting to get like...
What businesses are accepting NXT?
There's a server business where you can...
Oh, really? I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and there's things you can buy. You can go to stores that offer stuff for NXT. And I want to say GoCoin. I shouldn't say this without really checking it, but I want to say GoCoin accepts it too. But I mean, those are the ones where I'm seeing... my point being is that it's ironic that proof of stake is the thing that seems to be getting the underdog acceptance now. And I'm happy for it. So
I see a lot of the early adopters with Bitcoin going towards Ethereum and so-called Bitcoin 2.0 stuff.
Yeah, but they can't really do anything with it.
Yeah, I know, but they're directing their energy in that direction. So, I mean, we'll see how things are in 6 months.
Yeah, we'll see if any of that stuff even gets released. So, we only got a couple minutes, Marc. But
I'd like to say finally, I think cryptocurrency is very important just to keep your money and increase your money. So you just buy Bitcoin or NXT, and you know that it won't be printed into infinity, and that's the most important thing. The best saving instrument to preserve your capital and let it grow.
Absolutely, I love it. Marc de Mesel, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much, Brian and Stephanie.
How do people find you online?
Well, it's just why I sold half my Bitcoins for NXT, and you will find my YouTube channel.
And actually, Marc is offering free NXT if you get in touch with him via Facebook. The link for his Facebook page is in the show notes. Of course, it's Marc de Mesel. It's MarcDemesel. And you can find it, but take a look there. I mean, how can you beat it? You're getting free money. Stephanie, of course, thank you so much again for being on. And Carpe Lucem, everybody.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com. That's SOVRYN tech.com. And connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.